At some point, we've all wondered, what really happens when we close our eyes for the last time? That final moment, when the heart stops beating and the last breath escapes the lips. Where do we go? What do we feel? Does our consciousness simply go out like a candle in the wind? Or is there something more, a continuity beyond that door that both fascinates and frightens us? Today, I'm going to share some surprising revelations about what might be waiting for us on the other side, based on thousands of accounts, scientific research, and ancient traditions that all seem to point to one idea. Death may not be the end, but just a passage. If this topic sparks your curiosity as much as it did mine, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Every interaction helps us bring this life-changing knowledge to more people who, just like you, are looking for answers to the big questions of existence. Think about water. When frozen, it becomes solid and rigid like ice. When heated, it turns into vapor that's invisible to the eye. The substance is still H2O, just in different states. In the same way, many studies suggest that death might just be a change in the state of consciousness, not its disappearance. Since time immemorial, cultures around the world have talked about the continuity of the human essence after the physical body dies. The ancient Egyptians built an entire civilization on that belief. The Tibetans carefully documented the stages of the post-death journey in the Bardo Thodol. But what's most impressive is that even today, science is beginning to find clues that challenge the view of death as the absolute end of consciousness. Dr. Sam Parnia from New York University studied more than 2,000 cases of cardiac arrest and discovered that up to 40% of survivors reported some form of consciousness during the period when they were clinically dead. Even more surprising, some were able to accurately describe events that happened while they were unconscious, even when their brains showed no detectable activity. Neurologist Dr. Eben Alexander, once a skeptic about life after death, completely changed her view after her own near-death experience during a deep coma caused by meningitis. With her cerebral cortex completely inactive, she described vivid and transformative experiences that, according to conventional neuroscience, should have been impossible in that state. Could we be facing one of the biggest misunderstandings in human history? The idea that everything ends with physical death might just be a limited model of understanding, like believing the earth was flat before we had the tools to see beyond the horizon. I floated above my own body and watched the doctors try to resuscitate me. I didn't feel any pain, just an indescribable sense of freedom and weightlessness. This is the account of Maria, one of thousands who returned from near-death experiences and shared her journey beyond the threshold. The very first moment after physical death seems to follow a consistent pattern in countless reports from around the world, regardless of culture, religion, or personal beliefs. Suddenly freed from bodily limitations, consciousness experiences an extraordinary sense of expansion and mental clarity. Many describe it as a kind of awakening, as if the physical life was a dream from which they had finally woken up. It's common for people to report that they can see their own body from above, with a mixture of detachment and curiosity, without the despair we might expect. I was completely lucid, more present and aware than I ever was in life, says Roberto, who suffered a cardiac arrest during surgery and was declared dead for almost 4 minutes. What's even more intriguing is that many of these accounts include detailed descriptions of conversations and medical procedures that took place while the person was unconscious. In a study carried out at 15 hospitals in Europe and the US, objects were placed in high spots in emergency rooms, visible only from the ceiling. Surprisingly, some patients with near-death experiences were able to describe these objects accurately. This first stage appears to be a moment of shock and wonder, where the reality of death is confronted with evidence of the continuity of consciousness. It's as if, for the first time, we understand that we are not just our physical bodies, but something that temporarily inhabits them. I saw a light in the distance, a bright spot that kept growing until it turned into a tunnel of golden light. I felt irresistibly drawn to it, as if I were being gently pulled by a loving force. This is probably the most well-known and consistent element of near-death experiences, the famous tunnel of light. Reported by people of all ages, cultures, and beliefs From little kids to older adults, from staunch atheists to devout religious folks. The tunnel seems to be a universal passage in the process of dying. What makes this phenomenon so extraordinary is its universality. When anthropologist Gregory Shushan studied accounts of near-death experiences in 5 different, geographically isolated cultures, he found the description of a tunnel in all of them, even among those who had no previous contact with this concept in their traditions. The experience is described as a journey through a space that connects dimensions. It's not just visual, it's multisensory. Many people report hearing harmonious sounds, feeling a gentle acceleration, and experiencing a sense of movement without a physical body. It's almost as if consciousness is being transported through a portal that connects different planes of existence. The light at the end of the tunnel isn't seen as just a bright phenomenon, but as a living, conscious, and loving entity. The light knew me, says Carlos, a man who had a near-death experience at 42 after a serious car accident. It wasn't just bright, it was intelligent, compassionate. I knew I was in the presence of something sacred. Scientists propose neurological explanations for this phenomenon, suggesting that it could be due to oxygen deprivation in the brain during the dying process. However, that doesn't explain how completely different people from different cultures have such similar experiences, nor how they can report precise details of events that occurred while they were clinically dead. What happens after we pass through this tunnel? What, or who, is waiting for us on the other side? The answer to this question is even more extraordinary and leads us to the next stage of this incredible journey beyond life, as we know it. I wasn't alone. I was greeted by luminous presences that I instantly recognized, even though some of them had passed away decades before I was born. This is the story of João, a 78-year-old man who survived a cardiac arrest during surgery. A story that echoes that of thousands who have experienced the transition to the other side. After passing through the tunnel, one of the most moving and consistent phenomena reported is the encounter with beings who radiate light, love, and absolute understanding. These presences are often identified as deceased loved ones, spiritual guides, or, in some cases, religious figures that align with the person's individual beliefs. The recognition is immediate and goes beyond physical appearance. It's a recognition of essence. Surprisingly, there are well-documented cases where people meet relatives who had passed away, relatives they didn't even know had died. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, a pioneer in the study of death, documented the case of a little girl who, during a near-death experience, was greeted by her brother, even though she didn't know she had a brother who had died before she was born. When she returned, she confronted her parents with this information, leaving them stunned since they had never mentioned the lost sibling. Communication with these beings of light doesn't occur through spoken words. It's described as a form of instant and complete telepathy, where thoughts, emotions, and memories are shared in their entirety, free of the limitations of human language. It was like I could understand everything about them and they about me, without a single word exchanged, explains Anna, who had a near-death experience at 34. Anthropologist Alan Kelleher, after analyzing hundreds of reports, noted that the encounter with luminous beings is consistent even in cultures without religious concepts of angels or guides. This suggests that we're dealing with a phenomenon that transcends cultural conditioning. He concludes in his study Experiences from the Other World. I saw my whole existence flash before my eyes. Every moment, every choice, every impact I made, but the most striking part was that I didn't just see what I did, I felt what others felt because of my actions. The life review is perhaps the most transformative aspect of near-death experiences. Unlike a simple memory, it's a multidimensional reliving where a person experiences not only their own actions and choices, but also their impact on everyone involved. It's like a 360-degree interactive movie, where you're simultaneously the main character, a supporting character, and an observer. Neuropsychiatrist Peter Fenwick, after decades of studying this phenomenon, notes that the life review doesn't follow a typical chronological order. Time, as we know it, seems to not exist in that state. Patients report experiencing their entire life all at once, yet still being able to distinguish each event with extraordinary clarity, he explains. What makes this experience so deeply transformative is its empathetic nature. People report feeling directly the impact of their actions, the pain they caused, the joy they spread, the love they shared or denied. I felt the sadness I caused my mother when I treated her with indifference in my youth, as if it were my own pain, recounts Ricardo, a 52-year-old man who had a near-death experience after nearly drowning. Interestingly, this review is not experienced as external judgment, but as a profound process of self-understanding. There's no punishment, just clarity. There is no condemnation, only understanding, says Sophia, who had a near-death experience at 45. I realized that every small act of kindness created waves of light that affected far more people than I ever imagined. Researchers Raymond Moody and Kenneth Ring, pioneers in studying near-death experiences, observe that the life review often results in a profound transformation in people when they return. They develop a visceral understanding that love and human connections are what truly matter, concludes Ring after following hundreds of cases. The place I was in can't be properly described with human words. It had more dimensions than our physical world. The colors were more vivid, some I'd never seen before. The music was visible, and colors, even its sound. One of the most fascinating aspects of near-death experiences is the description of realities that surpass our three-dimensional understanding. People talk about landscapes of indescribable beauty, complex geometric architectures that seem to contain knowledge, and dimensions that operate under different laws than our physical ones. Dr. Pim van Lommel, the cardiologist who led one of the largest studies on NDEs in the Netherlands, notes that many patients use analogies and metaphors to try to communicate experiences that go beyond human language. It's like asking someone who's never seen colors to describe the color red, he explains. Our vocabulary and concepts are limited by physical experience. Many report that the other side isn't a static place, but one that responds to your consciousness. It was as if the environment formed and changed according to my thoughts and emotions, describes Teresa, a 67-year-old woman who experienced a near-death episode during heart surgery. It was like the surroundings were an extension of my consciousness, not something separate from it. Time and again, people mention a feeling of home, a deep sense of belonging, as if they were returning to a place more real and fundamental than the physical world. For the first time, I felt that I was exactly where I was meant to be, shares Jorge, a 43-year-old man who had a near-death experience after a motorcycle accident. Researchers like neuroscientist Dr. Mario Beauregard at the University of Montreal suggest that these experiences may indicate that consciousness isn't confined to the physical brain, but can operate beyond our neurobiological limits in certain circumstances. We're only just beginning to understand that reality might be far more complex and multidimensional than our current models suggest, he says. Intriguingly, the descriptions of these dimensions mirror ancient spiritual traditions, like the lokas, worlds, described in Vedic texts, or the celestial realms in Tibetan Buddhist traditions. Psychiatrist Carl Jung pointed out these parallels, suggesting that such experiences might represent access to a collective unconscious shared by all humanity. But if these dimensions exist, what is their purpose? And how do they relate to the journey of the soul after physical death? The answers to these questions take us even deeper into the mysteries of what might await us beyond the veil. Suddenly, every question I had about life, the universe, everything, the answers were simply there. It was as if I had access to an infinite cosmic library and could understand things that my human mind could never process. One of the most extraordinary aspects reported in near-death experiences is the sudden access to a vast field of knowledge that seems to contain all the information in the universe. This phenomenon, often described as a kind of cosmic download, goes far beyond ordinary learning, presenting itself as an immediate, holistic understanding. Dr. Jeffrey Long, an oncologist and founder of the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation, analyzed over 4,000 documented cases and found that this access to universal knowledge is reported by people from all walks of life, regardless of their education, age, or cultural background. It's like consciousness, when freed from the limitations of the physical brain, can tap into a field of information that permeates the entire cosmos, he explains. Many describe a feeling of instantly understanding the purpose of existence, the laws that govern the universe, and the interconnections between all beings. I saw that everything is connected in a web of light and information, says Mariana, a teacher who had a near-death experience at 39. I realized that there are no coincidences, just an infinitely complex pattern that we can't see from our earthly perspective. Various spiritual traditions refer to this field of universal knowledge. The Akashic records in Eastern traditions, the logos in Greek philosophy, the universal mind in Hermetic teachings, all hint at the idea of a cosmic repository of all information and wisdom. What makes this phenomenon even more intriguing is that some people return with specific knowledge they didn't have before. The case of Brazilian musician Jason Passos became famous when, after a near-death experience resulting from an accident, he returned with the ability to play the piano at a professional level, despite never having formally studied it. These kinds of occurrences, sometimes known as acquired savant syndrome, challenge our understanding of how information and skills are stored and accessed. It was the hardest choice I've ever made. On one side, there was an indescribable peace and love. On the other, a broken body and a world filled with pain. But I realized that my journey here wasn't over. A common element in near-death experiences is that moment of decision, to continue in the spiritual dimension or to return to the physical body. This existential crossroads reveals deep insights about the purpose of life and the nature of our human journey. Contrary to what one might expect, the return is rarely described as automatic or involuntary. Instead, it emerges as a conscious choice, a moment of decision where the person understands implications that go far beyond individual life. Dr. Bruce Grayson, a psychiatry professor at the University of Virginia who has studied over 1,000 cases of NDEs, notes that many people report receiving a clear message. It's not your time yet, or you have a mission to complete. Others describe visualizing the impact of their absence on the loved ones they would leave behind. I saw my kids growing up without their mom and felt the pain my departure would cause, shares Fernanda, who experienced a near-death episode during the birth of her second child. Even though part of me wanted to stay in that state of pure happiness, I chose to return out of love for them. In some cases, people say they saw future events they were yet to experience or the contributions they would make to the world. I was shown the work I still had to do, the people I would help, and I realized that leaving too soon would mean leaving a purpose unfulfilled, explains Ricardo, who survived a serious car accident at 28. The most astonishing part is that, even knowing they would return to fragile bodies and painful situations, many report that they made that choice with full awareness and acceptance. This decision often comes with a deep understanding of the value of human experiences, even the tough ones, for the evolution of the soul. Researcher PMH Atwater, who studied over 4,000 cases of near-death experiences, including hundreds of children, notes, the decision to return generally reflects an understanding that life on Earth, with all its challenges, offers opportunities for growth that aren't available on other planes of existence. I came back as a different person. Things that used to seem so important, money, status, possessions, became insignificant. What matters now are human connections, shared love, and compassion. It's like I've gained a fresh perspective on what really counts. One of the most consistent and well-documented aspects of near-death experiences is the profound transformation in people who return. Dramatic changes in personality, values, beliefs, and behavior are so common that researchers consider them a true fingerprint of NDEs. Dr. Kenneth Ring, after following hundreds of cases over decades, identified recurring patterns in these transformations: a reduced fear of death, increased spirituality, regardless of religious affiliation, greater love and compassion for others, reduced materialism, and a renewed appreciation for life. It's as if these people come back with an internal compass that's been completely recalibrated, explained psychologist Dr. Cassandra Vitan, who has studied shifts in consciousness. Their priorities are completely reorganized, now focused on more transcendent values. Many describe a renewed or clarified sense of purpose. Claudia, a finance executive who had a near-death experience at 42, left her high-powered career to start a nonprofit supporting vulnerable children. I understood that I was here to serve, to make the world a little better than I found it, she explains. This understanding isn't intellectual, it's visceral. Another notable aspect is the development of increased sensitivity and, in some cases, heightened intuitive abilities. Since coming back, I can pick up on other people's emotions much more clearly, says Pedro, who had a near-death experience after nearly drowning. It's like I can sense energy fields around people. Neuropsychologist Dr. Penny Sartori, who conducted a 5-year study on NDEs at a hospital in the United Kingdom, found that these transformations are long-lasting. Unlike religious conversions or trauma-induced changes, which can fade over time, the transformations after a near-death experience tend to deepen and integrate into a person's life over the years, she notes. Interestingly, these changes aren't limited to the psychological level. Studies have documented physiological alterations, like increased sensitivity to medications, changes in brainwave patterns, and shifts in electromagnetic sensitivity. It's as if the physical body is also being reprogrammed by the experience, observes Dr. Melvin Morse, a pediatrician who has extensively studied NDEs in children. Perhaps the deepest part of this transformation is a new relationship with death. "I'm not afraid of dying anymore," is a phrase repeated by almost everyone who has been through a near-death experience. I saw that death is just a transition, like moving from one room to another in an infinite house, explains Anna Maria, who experienced a near-death episode during emergency surgery. The greatest secret I discovered is that love is the only thing that matters. Not romantic or possessive love, but unconditional love that connects us to everything and everyone. This is the fabric of the universe, the fundamental truth we carry back with us. Among the thousands who have returned from near-death experiences, there is a notable consistency in the essential messages they bring. Like ambassadors from another dimension, their testimonies converge on some fundamental teachings that cut across religions, cultures, and eras. Nurse and researcher Dr. Diane Corcoran, who worked with war veterans that had NDEs, observes, regardless of your religious background or even the lack of one, people come back with a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of all life and the central role of love as the fundamental cosmic force. The first consistent message is about the nature of love. What we call love here is just a pale shadow of what I experienced there, says Miguel, a formerly skeptical man who had a near-death experience at 53. It was a love that fully accepts, that doesn't judge, that understands and forgives everything. The second recurring message is about the purpose of life. I realize that we're here to learn and grow, explains Christina, a young woman who had a near-death episode after a serious accident. Every challenge, every relationship, every hardship is an opportunity to evolve. We're not here by chance. Another consistent theme is the understanding that our actions have consequences far beyond what we can see. I saw that every act of kindness creates waves of light that spread throughout the universe, shares Roberto, who experienced a near-death moment during a cardiac arrest. And every act of cruelty or indifference creates shadows that affect us profoundly too. Researcher Evelyn Alcazer compiled hundreds of messages from those who had NDEs and noticed that many emphasize the importance of self-knowledge. They understand that inner work is just as important as external actions, she explains. The journey of self-discovery and self-transformation is seen as essential to the evolution of consciousness. What started as a taboo in the scientific community is becoming a legitimate field of study. We're only scratching the surface of a mystery that could redefine our understanding of consciousness and reality. In recent decades, the scientific community's attitude towards near-death experiences has evolved significantly, from an almost total rejection to a cautious curiosity, and, more recently, to rigorous studies conducted in respected institutions. The AWARE study, Awareness During Resuscitation, led by Dr. Sam Parnia in the UK and US, marks a turning point in this evolution. Using careful methodology, including placing shelves with images visible only from the ceiling in emergency rooms, the study documented cases where people were able to describe events that occurred while they were clinically dead. What we're finding suggests that consciousness doesn't always end when the heart stops, explains Dr. Parnia. In some cases, it seems to persist for periods when, according to our current understanding, the brain shouldn't be able to support conscious thought. Neuroimaging research by Dr. Mary Neal at the University of Colorado revealed that people who experienced NDEs showed distinct brain patterns when exposed to stimuli related to those experiences. There's something biologically real happening here. It's not just imagination, she asserts. At the forefront of this investigation is the study of non-local consciousness, the idea that consciousness can operate independently of the physical brain under certain conditions. Physicist Dr. Stuart Hameroff and anesthesiologist Sir Roger Penrose proposed the orchestrated objective reduction theory, suggesting that consciousness emerges from quantum processes within the microtubules of nerve cells, potentially connecting us to a fundamental level of the universe. We're witnessing the beginning of a scientific revolution, observes neuroscientist Dr. Marjorie Woollacott. Near-death experiences are forcing us to rethink the materialistic models of consciousness that have dominated science for over a century. What we learn about what happens when we die isn't just about death. It's fundamentally about how we should live. It's an awakening to a deeper understanding of who we are and why we're here. At the end of this journey through the mysteries of what might happen when we cross the threshold of physical death, we reach a surprising conclusion. The greatest impact of this knowledge isn't about death, but about life. Regardless of our individual beliefs, the experiences shared by thousands who have seen the other side invite us to deeply reflect on how we live on this side of the veil. If love is the universal currency, are we investing it wisely? If every action creates waves that affect everything, are we aware of the power of our choices? And if there's a greater purpose to our existence, are we in tune with it? Dr. Peter Fenwick, after decades of studying the phenomenon, observes, what these experiences teach us is that we are more than our physical bodies, and that consciousness can be much vaster than we ever imagined. It changes everything, our relationship with life, with death, and with every other human being. If you've watched until here, please share in the comments. How has this exploration touched you? Has it changed your perspective on life or death? Does your personal experience resonate with what was mentioned? Every story, every reflection, every question enriches our collective understanding of this great mystery. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue this journey exploring the great mysteries of existence. And remember, maybe death isn't a wall that separates, but a door that connects dimensions of the same infinite reality. And perhaps, just perhaps, the love we experience here is only the beginning of something much greater waiting for us on the other side. Subscribe to the channel and hit that like button to access more stories like this. The deepest truth revealed by near-death experiences can be summed up in one simple sentence. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And understanding that, truly understanding it, can change not just how we die, but more importantly how we live each precious moment we're given.